The day began like any other on Earth. People rushed to work, children went to school, and cities filled with the usual noise of life. Nobody knew that by evening the world would never be the same. At first, the signs were small. Scientists at deep space observatories picked up strange signals, unusual energy readings far beyond the solar system. At first, they thought it was just interference, maybe from pulsars or distant stars, but within hours, the signals grew stronger, clearer, and more terrifying. Something massive was moving in the darkness of space, something that was coming straight toward Earth. At the International Space Station, astronauts were the first to see them. Through the thick glass of observation windows, small specks appeared against the black of space. At first, they looked like distant stars, but these lights moved together, in formation, like a swarm. And then, the truth became clear. They were not stars. They were ships, warships, thousands of them, moving in silence, blocking out the stars one by one. 10,000 alien warships were on their way, covering the emptiness like a tidal wave of steel and fire. When the images reached Earth, panic began to spread. Governments tried to keep the news hidden, but the truth moved faster than lies. Amateur astronomers posted shaky videos of the growing fleet on the internet. News anchors interrupted broadcasts, their voices shaking as they explained the impossible. Fear spread through every street, every city, every home. For the first time in history, humanity realized it was not alone, and whatever had found them was not coming in peace. World leaders gathered in emergency meetings, in the underground chambers of the United Nations. Generals and politicians argued in desperation. Some demanded surrender, believing resistance was hopeless. Others refused, saying humanity must fight no matter the cost. No one had ever seen a force like this. Earth's combined armies, all its weapons, all its fleets, looked like toys compared to the storm approaching. But one truth was clear. The aliens had not come to talk. As the hours passed, the fleet drew closer. Satellites caught clearer images, ships longer than skyscrapers, bristling with weapons, glowing with unknown energy. They formed perfect lines, moving with terrifying precision. 10,000 blades of destruction aimed at one small blue world. The sun itself seemed to fade as the fleet closed in, their shadows stretching across the earth. The skies turned dark, and with them, hope began to die. But in the shadows of fear, something else grew. Humanity had always been a species that refused to kneel. Through history, every invader, every empire, every tyrant had believed they could crush mankind. And every time, humanity had fought back. From ancient warriors with swords to soldiers. With tanks, from rebels in forests to astronauts in space, humans had survived. This time the enemy was not from Earth, but the spirit of resistance burned as bright as ever. Across the planet, preparations began. Fighter jets were scrambled, missile silos unlocked, secret bases activated. Engineers worked day and night to bring forgotten projects online. Scientists whispered of weapons built in secret, technology hidden from the public, desperate measures for a desperate time. The world had always prepared for war against itself, but now, for the first time, all of humanity faced a single enemy. Old rivalries and borders began to vanish, replaced by one shared fear, one shared destiny. Still, fear was everywhere. In the streets of New York, London, Tokyo, and Karachi, people gathered in silence, staring up at the sky as the first shadows appeared. They could see them now, without telescopes, dark shapes moving slowly across the stars. Children clung to their parents. Soldiers gripped their rifles. Priests and imams filled temples, churches, and mosques, praying louder than ever before. The world had never been so united and never so afraid. Then the message came. It was broadcast on every frequency, every screen, every device. A voice, cold and deep, spoke in perfect translation. People of Earth, you are surrounded. Your world belongs to us. Surrender, and you may be allowed to live as slaves. Resist, and you will be erased from existence." The voice echoed in every home, every heart. It was not a threat. It was a promise. The message repeated again and again, until the silence that followed felt heavier than the words. The leaders of Earth sat in silence, faces pale, eyes hollow. 10,000 warships against one fragile world. The math was impossible. The odds were hopeless. But then, one old general stood. His voice was rough, filled with steel. "We have been given ultimatums before. We have been threatened before. Every empire that thought it could break humanity has fallen. These aliens will learn the same lesson. We do not bow. We do not surrender. If they want this world, they will pay for it in blood." His words spread like fire. Across every army base, every bunker, every city, the words were repeated. "We do not surrender." The night grew darker as the fleet finally reached orbit. The ships hung in the sky like monsters, glowing with strange energy, their shadows falling. Across entire countries, people screamed, people prayed, people waited. And then, in the silence before the storm, Earth took its first breath of defiance. Fighters roared into the air, missiles lit up the darkness. In every corner of the planet, humanity prepared to fight. The stage was set. 10,000 alien warships against one stubborn species. The invaders believed victory was certain. But, in the heart of humanity, something stronger than fear was rising. Rage, defiance, the will to survive. The sky had turned dark, but deep inside that darkness a spark began to burn. It was small, fragile, almost invisible. But it was enough. Because that spark carried the weight of an entire world, and it would soon ignite a fire that would shake the stars. The alien fleet hung in the skies like a wall of death, their massive ships circling the planet with cold precision. Humanity had seen invasions in movies and books, but never had imagination matched the reality now unfolding. 10,000 warships glowed above Earth, each one larger than any aircraft carrier, each one armed with weapons no human mind could fully understand. The planet was trapped beneath their shadow, and fear spread like a plague. Every screen, every radio, every device suddenly flickered to life once more, carrying the same chilling voice that had shaken humanity hours before. The voice was not human. It was deep, echoing, mechanical yet strangely alive. It spoke without emotion, without mercy. "People of Earth, you stand before the empire of Zarkath. You are a primitive species, unworthy of your world. Yet our emperor is merciful. Kneel, surrender, and you may live as slaves beneath our rule. Resist, and your planet will burn. You have 24 hours to decide." The message repeated again and again, in every language, in every home, until it became impossible to ignore. People wept as they listened. Some screamed, some fell to their knees in prayer, and others whispered that it was hopeless. For the first time in history, every human heart beat with the same terror, and the countdown had begun. In secret underground chambers, world leaders gathered again. The United Nations bunker, buried deep beneath Geneva, became the nerve center of human survival. Screens showed the alien fleet above the atmosphere, ships moving in flawless formation. Generals studied them, trying to find weakness, but the numbers alone were crushing. 10,000 against Earth's few thousand planes and ships. Humanity was outmatched 100 to 1. Politicians argued with desperation. Some shouted that surrender was the only chance. "If we bow, maybe they spare us," one leader said, his face pale, his voice trembling. Others slammed fists against the table. "Spare us? As slaves? You think they traveled across the stars to show kindness? No. They will strip our planet, take our children, and erase our names from history. Surrender is death with chains. Resistance is death with honor. The room filled with shouting, voices clashing like swords. No decision could satisfy everyone. Some leaders begged for negotiations. Some demanded immediate war. But one truth became clear: there was no middle path. The Zarkath Empire had not come for peace. They had come for conquest. While leaders fought with words, the people outside faced a different battle. Streets filled with panic. In every city, stores were looted, power grids failed, and chaos spread. Some tried to flee into the countryside, hoping distance would save them. Others armed themselves, convinced the aliens would land any moment. Governments declared martial law. Soldiers stood in every corner, trying to control the madness, but fear was stronger than orders. And above it all, the alien fleet drifted silently, their weapons glowing, their threat hanging heavier than the clouds. Yet, in the chaos, sparks of courage appeared. In secret laboratories, scientists worked without sleep. Old projects, hidden for years, were brought back. Weapons that had been considered impossible were suddenly the last hope. Engineers in America activated railguns buried beneath deserts. In Russia, ancient bunkers lit up with nuclear warheads armed for launch. In China, satellites were prepared with experimental lasers. In Europe, drone swarms were awakened from storage. Even private companies, once focused only on money, now turned their technology toward survival. Humanity was fractured, but survival had forced a strange unity. For once, enemies stood together. For once, the planet remembered it was one species, one family, under one sky. Meanwhile, the countdown continued. 24 hours. Then 23. Every second passed like a blade against the throat of the world. Children asked their parents if tomorrow would come. Priests gave sermons filled with fire and tears. Musicians sang songs of resistance in the streets, their voices rising louder than the cries of fear. Humanity waited in silence for a decision that would shape history forever. Back in the bunker, the argument reached its peak. A younger leader, desperate and afraid, stood and shouted, "If we fight, billions will die. Our weapons are nothing compared to theirs. We will burn. Is this what you want for our children?" His words hung heavy. But then an old general, scarred from wars long past, rose slowly to his feet. His voice was calm, deep, carrying the weight of truth. "If we kneel, billions will live as slaves. Our children will grow in chains, their names forgotten, their future stolen. I would rather die free than live crawling before monsters." Silence followed him, heavier than gunfire. For a moment, every leader saw the truth. The choice was not between life and death. The choice was between slavery and freedom, between despair and defiance, between silence and resistance. The decision was made. Earth would not kneel. A final message was sent to the alien fleet, short and sharp, translated into every frequency. A single human voice spoke, filled with steel. "This is Earth. We do not surrender." The words echoed across space, a defiant whisper against the roar of the galaxy. To the aliens, it was nothing more than foolish pride. To humanity, it was a spark of fire in the darkness. The alien fleet did not reply with words. Instead, their ships began to move. They shifted formation, descending closer to the planet. Energy glowed brighter along their hulls. Weapons powered up, filling the skies with a deadly light. The countdown had ended. The invasion was beginning, but Earth was no longer waiting. In silos across the world, missiles were armed. On airstrips, pilots climbed into jets. Submarines slid beneath the seas, ready to strike from the shadows. Satellites were aimed. Computers, armed, drones activated. The planet that had once seemed divided now beat as one heart, one fist, one voice. The aliens believed they had found an easy prey. They would soon discover the truth. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was a predator that had been pushed into a corner, and a cornered predator was the most dangerous of all. The skies above Earth glowed with alien fire, but deep below, the Earth itself trembled with human fury. The world waited as the first shots of war were about to fall. The ultimatum had been given, the choice had been made, and the story of survival had just begun. The alien fleet began its slow descent toward Earth, filling the skies with fire and shadow. But unknown to the invaders, humanity had not been as blind as they believed. For decades, whispers of a secret project had circled among governments. Stories of hidden bases and mysterious funding that vanished into the dark corners of the world. Most citizens never believed them, dismissing such rumors as conspiracy theories. But now, as the world stood on the edge of annihilation, those secrets were revealed. Beneath mountains, buried deep under deserts, hidden under the oceans, humanity had been preparing. They had no illusions of peace among the stars. For some leaders and scientists had always suspected that if humanity ever met another species, it would not be with open hands, but with sharpened claws. They called it Project Sentinel, a global effort hidden even from most of the world's leaders, a desperate plan built on the quiet agreement that one day Earth might need weapons beyond imagination to survive. Project Sentinel was not one single weapon, but many, scattered across the globe like seeds waiting for the storm. In the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, massive rail guns were buried beneath the ice, their barrels longer than skyscrapers, designed to hurl metal slugs at speeds so fast they could punch through starships. On the floor of the Pacific Ocean, deep beneath the crushing waves, lay submarine fortresses armed with missiles that had never been tested in battle, warheads filled with experimental plasma charges. On the dark side of the moon, in caverns, carved in secret by machines that left no trace, sat the heart of Sentinel, a weapon so powerful that even those who built it feared its use. It was not a missile, not a cannon, but a reactor-driven beam capable of slicing through fleets in a single sweep. It had been built in silence, hidden from telescopes, shielded from alien eyes. It was Earth's last card, a weapon that could not be tested, only unleashed when all else failed. But Sentinel was not only about weapons. It was also about people. In secret training facilities, far from the public eye, soldiers had been prepared for war in space. They were not the largest armies, not millions of men, but small elite groups trained to fight where no human had ever fought before. Pilots drilled in experimental fighters that could dance through vacuum with speed beyond normal jets. Engineers designed drones small enough to slip inside starships and tear them apart from within. Scientists created artificial intelligence programs that could predict enemy movements before they happened, feeding information to commanders in real time. Every piece of technology, every idea once thought impossible, had been gathered in one desperate gamble. Humanity might not have numbers, but it had cunning, creativity, and a will to survive. As the alien fleet prepared its assault, world leaders finally learned the full truth. In the Geneva bunker, hidden doors opened, revealing screens filled with schematics, maps of hidden bases, and lists of weapons no one outside Sentinel had ever heard of. Shock rippled through the room, some leaders outraged they had been kept. In the dark, others relieved that humanity had more than stone and fire to face the storm. But arguments no longer mattered. Time was gone. The invaders were here. The only choice left was to unleash every secret humanity had. Around the world, Project Sentinel awakened. In Antarctica, the ice cracked as the first railgun rose from the frozen ground, its steel barrel shining under the weak sun. Engineers armed the reactor that powered it, hearts racing as energy levels climbed higher and higher. In the Pacific, submarine captains gave final orders, their crews silent as they watched alien shadows cross above the waves. On the moon, deep in hidden tunnels, the great weapon stirred, glowing faintly as reactors ignited for the first time. The hum shook the stone, a low growl like the heartbeat of a giant. If unleashed, it could burn entire fleets in a single breath, but the cost would be great. The scientists who built it warned that its power could scar the moon itself, tearing chunks of rock into space. Yet no one cared anymore. Earth had reached the edge, and survival demanded risk. Meanwhile, ordinary people prepared in their own way. Farmers filled barns with supplies, ready to hide families underground. Mechanics welded steel plates to trucks, turning them into makeshift weapons. Hackers linked old satellites together, building crude eyes in the sky. Around the planet, humans who had never spoken to each other shared one purpose: to fight, to survive, to defy. For the first time, humanity remembered it was one. Above them, the alien fleet shifted, moving like a tide across the stars. The Zarkath Empire saw Earth as a primitive world, its weapons as laughable toys, its people as insects. They had crushed dozens of planets before, burned civilizations into ash, enslaved countless species. To them, Earth was no different, just another conquest in a long line of victories. But the invaders did not understand humanity's nature. They had never faced a species that had fought wars across every continent, that had risen from caves to cities, from fire to space, through endless struggle. They did not understand that survival was written in every human's blood. As the first alien squadrons broke formation and prepared their attack runs, Project Sentinel came alive. Generals watched glowing screens filled with alien movements, AI systems predicting their every step. Pilots climbed into experimental fighters, their hands steady despite the odds. Engineers whispered prayers as they armed weapons never meant to be fired except in nightmares. In bunkers, families clung together, listening as alarms screamed across cities. And in the skies, the first sparks of battle flickered. The aliens had given humanity 24 hours to surrender, but humanity had answered with silence and steel. Now, the secret plan was revealed. The weapons were awake, and the time for fear was over. Humanity was ready. The predators had come to claim their prey, but they would find prey that bit back. Project Sentinel had waited in the shadows for decades. Tonight, it would step into the light, and as the first railgun prepared to fire, as the moon's hidden weapon began to glow, as the alien fleet closed in, one truth echoed in every human heart. They were outnumbered, outgunned, outmatched. But they were not broken. The fight for Earth was about to begin, and the galaxy itself would soon learn the price of underestimating humanity. The sky above Earth was no longer the sky of yesterday, no longer blue and calm, no longer filled with sunlight and clouds, but instead filled with fire, shadows, and the glow of thousands of alien warships that hovered in silence like vultures, waiting to strike. The moment the ultimatum expired, the fleet moved. Great triangular ships slid forward, breaking formation as smaller vessels darted ahead like predators released from a cage. The first beams of alien energy cut across the atmosphere, glowing lines that tore through clouds and split the heavens with violent light. Cities trembled as the beams struck, blasting apart entire blocks with explosions that shook the ground like earthquakes. The invasion had begun. Humanity, however, did not stand idle. From the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, the first of the massive railguns roared. It was a sound deeper than thunder, a scream of steel as a slug of solid metal was hurled into the sky at impossible speed. The projectile tore through the thin atmosphere, glowing with heat as it flew upward, and then smashed into one of the lead alien ships. The warship's shields flared, cracked, and then shattered as the slug punched through its armored hull. In a blinding flash, the alien ship exploded, fragments raining fire across the upper atmosphere. For a moment, silence followed. The galaxy had seen Earth fire back. In the Pacific Ocean, submarines surfaced like steel beasts rising from the depths. Their missile hatches opened, and experimental warheads streaked into the sky, leaving trails of fire behind them. Alien interceptors swarmed down to stop them, but drones, small, fast, human-built machines, rose to meet them in the air. Dogfights erupted above the waves, streaks of missiles and gunfire tearing across the ocean sky. A few alien fighters were destroyed, spinning into the water in flames, and cheers erupted on the submarine decks. For the first time in history, humans had killed machines from another world. In the deserts of Nevada, hidden silos opened, and rockets roared upward. Their targets were not the massive warships, but the smaller escorts that circled them. Explosions lit the heavens as a few alien escorts fell, their wreckage burning like meteors as they crashed toward Earth. The invaders were losing ships, but their numbers were too great. For every alien vessel destroyed, 10 more took its place. The humans fought fiercely, but the sky seemed endless with enemies. Meanwhile, human pilots launched into the air. Jets armed with experimental weapons screamed upward into battles they were never designed for, but the men and women inside them fought with a desperation that no machine could match. Outnumbered 100 to 1, they danced between beams of energy, diving, rolling, striking when they could. One squadron of 5 pilots managed to bring down 2 alien fighters by luring them into Earth's atmosphere, where the thicker air slowed the alien craft, giving the jets a brief edge. The alien ships exploded in brilliant fireballs, and the surviving pilots screamed their triumph into radios that crackled with static. Across the world, small victories like these gave humanity hope, but the losses were brutal. Entire cities burned. Alien beams cut across skyscrapers, melting steel and stone. Millions fled into bunkers, screaming as the sky collapsed above them. Soldiers on the ground fired everything they had, rockets, anti-air missiles, even artillery, but for every alien ship destroyed, 100 more rained fire upon them. And yet, despite the devastation, humanity fought on. In the Geneva bunker, commanders watched the battle unfold on glowing screens. One general slammed his fist against the table as another alien ship was brought down. "They bleed!" he shouted. "They can be killed!" That single truth became the core of Earth's resistance. The invaders were not invincible gods. They were flesh, steel, and fire, and they could be destroyed. The AI systems of Project Sentinel calculated patterns, predicting alien movements, feeding coordinates to Earth's defenses. With every passing hour, humans adapted. They learned how the alien ships maneuvered, where their shields were weakest, how their weapons recharged. Each new battle was a lesson, and humanity was fast learners. On the dark side of the moon, the hidden weapon of Project Sentinel powered up, but it did not yet fire. Scientists monitored it carefully, knowing that once unleashed, it might change everything. For now, smaller strikes were enough to shock the invaders, to show them that Earth was not the weak, defenseless world they believed it to be. The first clash was not a battle of victory, but a battle of survival, of showing the galaxy that humanity could stand and fight. And stand they did. The alien commanders, watching from their great flagship, were unsettled. Reports flowed in. Ships destroyed, fighters lost, shields broken. Never before had such a primitive world inflicted such damage. The Zarkath had conquered dozens of planets, crushed countless civilizations, but none had resisted like this. To them, the losses were small compared to their massive fleet, but the insult was enormous. The humans had refused surrender, and worse, they had drawn blood. The alien commanders vowed to make Earth pay, to burn every city, to erase every trace of humanity from existence. Their arrogance blinded them to the truth. The more they struck, the more humanity resisted. On Earth, as night fell across one hemisphere, the sky glowed red with fire. Families huddled in bunkers, listening to the rumble above, while soldiers fought and died on the front lines. Fear and despair filled every corner, but so did courage. In a ruined city, a group of firefighters pulled children from rubble as alien ships burned overhead. In a desert base, engineers worked with bleeding hands to reload a railgun. In the skies, a lone pilot with his jet on fire dove straight into an alien warship, sacrificing himself to tear the enemy apart. Humanity had always been stubborn, always been defiant. And now that spirit shone brighter than the fires of war. By the end of the first day, Earth was scarred. Millions were dead, cities destroyed, oceans burning with wreckage. But the aliens had lost too. Nearly 200 of their ships lay in ruins, shattered by weapons they had thought impossible for humans to wield. 200 out of 10,000 was small, almost nothing. Yet it was proof. Proof that Earth was not prey. Proof that humanity would not kneel. The first clash had ended not with victory, but with survival, and survival was enough. The world looked to the sky where the alien fleet still hung heavy and terrible, and whispered the same words in every language. We fight. The battle for Earth had only just begun. The second day of the invasion began with fire in the skies. Across the planet, alien warships descended lower into the atmosphere, their massive hulls blotting out the sun, their weapons cutting through the clouds with beams of burning light. The Earth shook under the weight of their assault as entire cities collapsed. But humanity had not fallen, not yet. And in the air, the real war began. Dogfights filled the skies as human pilots launched in wave after wave, their jets screaming upward to meet alien fighters that darted through the atmosphere like predators hunting prey. It was chaos. But within the chaos burned the unbreakable will of men and women who refused to give up their world. Outnumbered and outgunned, the pilots fought with skill, instinct, and desperation. Some flew so high their engines froze from the thin air, while others skimmed just above rooftops to draw alien craft into narrow chases. Missiles streaked across the skies, tracer rounds lit up the clouds, and the heavens became a battlefield where courage burned brighter than technology. One sector above Europe, a squadron of 12 human jets faced nearly 100 alien fighters. The alien craft were sleek, faster, and armed with weapons that glowed with deadly light. But the human pilots used the skies themselves as weapons. They lured the enemy into storms, used radar shadows to mask their approach, and sacrificed altitude for surprise. One by one, alien ships exploded, torn apart by missiles that struck at weak points the pilots had learned to target in the first clash. The squadron was reduced to 6, but they had destroyed more than 20 alien craft before retreating into the clouds, and their voices carried triumph even through static-filled radios. In the Pacific, massive carrier groups launched wave after wave of fighters, filling the skies with hundreds of jets that fought alongside drone swarms built by Project Sentinel. The drones were small and fast, their artificial intelligence guiding them through impossible maneuvers, and together with the pilots they tore through enemy formations. Explosions painted the sky above the ocean red and gold as alien wreckage crashed into the waves, but the cost was terrible. For every alien ship destroyed, dozens of human aircraft fell. Pilots screamed their last words into radios, their jets trailing smoke before vanishing in fire. Families listened to broadcasts that listed the fallen, names read one after another until the list seemed endless. Yet even in despair, the world found strength. Civilians sent messages of courage to the fighters. Children drew pictures of planes defeating monsters, and engineers worked without sleep to repair the surviving jets. Across the world, people understood one thing. The battle for the skies was not just about weapons, but about hope. Because as long as humanity held the air, they still had a chance to survive. Over North America, the battle raged harder than anywhere else. Alien warships moved low, targeting military bases with beams that carved the earth like knives. But the railguns of Project Sentinel fired again and again, tearing through alien hulls with unstoppable slugs of metal. The air shook with each shot, the sound echoing across hundreds of miles as humanity showed that its planet was not defenseless. Above the Midwest, human fighters fought so fiercely that even alien commanders were forced to acknowledge their courage. Squadrons that should have been wiped out in minutes lasted hours, downing dozens of enemies with skill and sacrifice. One pilot, his jet burning and systems failing, turned his last dive into a weapon, ramming his plane directly into the engine of a warship. The explosion tore the alien vessel apart, and the name of the pilot became a legend whispered across radios as proof of humanity's unbreakable spirit. Meanwhile, in Asia, battles over the skies of China and India turned entire regions into storms of fire. Alien ships rained destruction on cities, but missile silos answered, filling the sky with counterfire. In Beijing, citizens watched from bunkers as the sky lit up with explosions, their hearts pounding with fear and pride as they heard that alien vessels had fallen to human missiles. In India, a squadron of experimental drones ambushed alien fighters, swarming them in clouds so thick the aliens could not escape, ripping through their shields until the sky itself seemed to bleed fire. Above Africa, battles stretched across deserts and savannas as human forces from many nations joined together, their planes old and their weapons outdated, yet their courage unmatched. Even as alien beams scorched the ground, human pilots kept flying, and the skies above the Sahara became a graveyard of burning ships, both human and alien. The aliens grew frustrated. The humans were supposed to break easily, to fall to their superior numbers and technology, but instead they resisted, adapted, and struck back with a fury the Zarkath had never seen. The invaders had never faced a species so reckless, so willing to die for each victory, and it unsettled them. Their commanders ordered more ships into the atmosphere, hoping to crush the resistance once and for all. Giant cruisers descended. Lower, their weapons glowing with brighter fire, preparing to sweep the skies clean. But their arrogance blinded them to the truth. The lower they came, the closer they moved into the reach of Earth's hidden weapons. Project Sentinel activated more of its systems. In the mountains of South America, hidden railguns opened fire, each shot tearing massive holes into descending cruisers. Over the Atlantic, stealth drones launched from underwater bases swarmed upward, slipping past alien shields to detonate inside their engines. On the moon, the great weapon continued to charge, its reactors glowing brighter with each passing hour. The humans knew the time was not yet right to use it, but when it fired, it would change everything. Until then, the skies belonged to the pilots, to the drones, to the courage of men and women who refused to let the heavens fall without a fight. By the end of the second day, Earth was battered and bleeding, but the skies were still contested. Thousands of human aircraft had been destroyed, tens of thousands of civilians were dead, and entire cities lay in ruins. But alien losses were heavier than they had expected. More than 500 alien fighters and dozens of warships had been shot down or destroyed in the dogfights and missile strikes. It was not enough to turn the tide, but it was enough to prove a truth that echoed across the world. The aliens were not unstoppable, and their numbers could be reduced. Every fallen ship, every destroyed fighter was one step closer to survival. The skies were filled with smoke and ash, with fire and wreckage, but humanity still held its ground. The battle was far from over, and the alien fleet still outnumbered them by thousands. But for the first time since the invasion began, hope flickered across Earth. The skies had not been surrendered. The aliens had met resistance and found blood waiting for them. Humanity's spirit soared with every burning alien wreck that fell from the sky. The battle for the skies was not yet won, but it was not lost either, and in that fragile balance lay the future of the planet. The skies burned red as the war dragged into its third day, the world shaking beneath the endless clash of alien fire and human defiance. But while battles raged across continents and oceans, deep in the shadows, a secret that had been hidden for decades stirred awake. Project Sentinel's greatest creation, the one weapon never revealed to the public, The weapon so powerful, even the men and women who built it feared its release, was ready. It had been buried on the far side of the moon, carved into hidden tunnels, powered by reactors that glowed with stolen fury and guarded by silence. For years, only a handful of scientists, engineers, and generals knew it existed, and even among them there were doubts if it should ever be used. But now, with Earth bleeding and the alien fleet pressing closer, hesitation was gone. They called it the lunar lance, a weapon not of bullets or missiles but of pure energy, a beam that could cut through space like a sword of light, capable of burning through entire squadrons of warships with one strike. Its power came at a terrible cost, draining energy so violently that the moon itself trembled when the reactors ignited, but the time for fear had ended. Humanity needed a miracle, and the lunar lance was their final hope. On Earth, leaders in the Geneva bunker received the reports. The alien fleet was tightening its noose, sending cruisers lower into the atmosphere, preparing to unleash destruction on a scale far greater than before. Entire continents could be burned to ash if their advance was not stopped. Generals argued that conventional weapons were not enough. The railguns and missiles could slow the enemy but not break them, and the skies were drowning in fire. The order was clear. The lunar lance must fire. In hidden tunnels beneath the moon's surface, engineers worked with trembling hands, activating systems that had never been tested outside simulations. The ground shook as enormous reactors surged, with energy, their cores glowing like captured stars. Alarms screamed as the power built higher and higher, and scientists monitored every number, every fluctuation, knowing that a single mistake could cause the weapon to collapse and tear half the moon apart. But fear did not stop them. Humanity had reached the edge, and there was no turning back. Above the moon, alien ships patrolled lazily, confident that no threat could rise from such a barren rock. They had detected nothing unusual in their scans, believing the humans too primitive to hide anything so dangerous. Their arrogance would be their undoing. As the weapon powered, its hidden doors opened, massive panels sliding apart to reveal a barrel carved into the rock itself, larger than any human structure, stretching for miles like a giant waiting to awaken. Silence filled the chamber as final. Switches were thrown. A countdown began, voices shaking as they called out the numbers. 3, 2, 1. The weapon fired. From the dark side of the moon, a beam of pure white light erupted, brighter than the sun, faster than thought. It cut across the void, striking directly into the heart of the alien fleet. In a single instant, hundreds of warships were sliced apart, their shields useless, their hulls melting like wax under fire. The sky over Earth lit up as burning wreckage, rained down, explosions echoing louder than thunder. Entire formations of alien cruisers vanished in blinding flashes, their remains scattering like ashes across the heavens. For a moment, the world fell silent in awe. Humanity had struck a blow that shook the stars. On the ground, people poured out of bunkers and shelters, staring at the burning streaks that crossed the night sky. Children pointed with wide eyes, soldiers shouted with joy, families wept with relief. Across every city, radios crackled with the news. The aliens were not invincible. Humanity had a weapon that could fight them, and it had just destroyed hundreds of their ships in one strike. Hope spread like wildfire, lifting hearts that had been drowned in despair. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity believed they might survive, but the victory carried danger. In the alien flagship, commanders raged as reports poured in of entire fleets annihilated by a weapon they had never seen before. They demanded answers, furious that a primitive world could wield such destructive power. Their arrogance cracked, replaced with fury and fear. They ordered their remaining forces to focus on the moon, to scour its surface until the weapon was destroyed. Thousands of alien ships broke formation, surging toward the moon in waves, determined to silence the lance before it could fire again. Humanity knew the aliens would respond, and defenses were already in motion. The lunar lance was powerful but slow, needing hours to recharge between shots, and in that time, it was vulnerable. The men and women stationed in the hidden moon base prepared for the storm, strapping into fighters, activating drone swarms, and readying smaller defense cannons. They knew most of them would not live, but they also knew what was at stake. If the lance survived long enough to fire again, it could cripple the alien armada. If it fell, Earth would be left to burn. Back on Earth, debates erupted in the bunker. Some argued the weapon should not be used again, fearing it could destabilize the moon or even endanger the planet itself. Others shouted that the risk was meaningless compared to extinction. The generals silenced the arguments with a single truth. Humanity had no other choice. The lance would fire again, no matter the cost. As alien fleets roared toward the moon, battles erupted in orbit. Human drones launched from hidden stations, swarming into the enemy ranks, exploding themselves against larger ships. A handful of experimental human fighters, launched from secret bases, joined the defense, darting between alien cruisers with reckless bravery. Explosions lit the black of space, the silent battlefield glowing with fire as humans and aliens clashed above the barren surface. Inside the lunar lance chamber, alarms blared as engineers pushed the reactors harder, charging faster, burning hotter, ignoring the screams of the machines as metal strained under the pressure. Time was short, the aliens were coming closer, and the weapon had to fire again. The clash was brutal. Alien ships rained destruction on the moon, their beams tearing open craters and collapsing tunnels. Human defenders fought and died in silence, their voices lost in the void, but their sacrifice bought precious minutes. The lance glowed brighter, its energy building to unbearable levels. Scientists screamed over radios, urging the defenders to hold just a little longer. Then, as another wave of alien cruisers swept closer, the lance fired for the second time. The beam tore across space, cutting through hundreds more ships, a wave of destruction so massive that even the alien flagship trembled. Thousands of their vessels still remained, but fear spread among them. They had come expecting easy victory, yet now they faced a weapon capable of burning their fleet apart piece by piece. Humanity, though bloodied, had shown its fangs. On Earth, cheers shook the bunkers, hope igniting stronger than ever. The hidden weapon of the moon had changed everything. The aliens could still win, their numbers still overwhelming, but the battle was no longer one-sided. Humanity had proven it could hurt them, that survival was possible, that defiance was not madness but destiny. The skies burned with wreckage, the moon trembled under the strain, and the war entered a new stage. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy itself began to realize that Earth was not prey. It was a predator awakening, and the roar of its hidden weapon had just shaken the stars. The second blast of the lunar lance had left the galaxy in shock, the skies above Earth glowing with burning wreckage as broken alien ships fell like dying stars. But while the world cheered and hope spread like fire, the war was far from over. The alien fleet, though wounded, still numbered in the thousands, their fury rising higher with every loss, and their commanders swore that Earth would be crushed no matter the cost. In the hidden bunker beneath Geneva, human leaders studied the situation with grim eyes. The lunar lance had proven its power, but it could not fire again for many hours, and the aliens would use that time to strike harder than ever before. Humanity had gained a weapon, but the enemy still held the advantage of numbers. It was in this moment of uncertainty that humanity revealed another secret, not as destructive as the lance, but equally dangerous in its own way. Project Veil, HFY, system of cloaking technology and false signals, had been hidden for decades, designed not for attack, but for deception, a way to confuse enemies, to make them see ghosts in the sky. Now, with the alien fleet circling in fury, Project Veil was unleashed. Across the atmosphere, satellites that had long been thought destroyed suddenly came alive, releasing swarms of decoys, holographic images of fleets that did not exist, signals that mimicked warships, and shadows that appeared real to the alien sensors. Cruisers fired at phantoms, wasting energy and revealing their positions. Entire squadrons chased after false signals, burning fuel and scattering formations, while real human ships used the chaos to strike from hiding. Small drone fleets attacked and vanished into the illusions, every strike turning the battlefield into a storm of confusion. The aliens, once so confident in their strength, now struggled to tell what was real and what was not. Their fury grew, but so did their mistakes, and with every error, humanity clawed back more ground. On Earth, people watched live transmissions of alien ships firing wildly into empty space, destroying nothing but shadows, and the sight gave them strength. Soldiers in bunkers shouted with laughter, children cheered, and leaders whispered that perhaps humanity could win after all. But beneath the celebration there was fear, because everyone knew the illusions would not last forever. The aliens were not fools, and sooner or later they would see through the tricks. Humanity needed more than deception. They needed a plan to turn survival into victory. In the bunker, generals and scientists argued late into the night. Some demanded more strikes from the lunar lance. Others insisted on using every hidden weapon at once, while a few warned that too much power unleashed too quickly could destroy the planet itself. The arguments ended when a single voice spoke, calm but firm. Humanity's greatest weapon was not the lance, not the veil, not even the drones or missiles. It was time. If Earth could hold for just a little longer, the aliens would begin to fracture from within. Already, captured signals hinted at cracks in their unity, disagreements among their commanders, and doubts spreading through their ranks. The war was no longer only a battle of fire, but of will, and humanity had no intention of surrendering. The next day, the aliens launched their greatest assault yet. Thousands of ships descended into low orbit, their cannons unleashing storms of fire that lit the skies. Cities shook as beams of energy struck the earth, tearing open seas, splitting mountains, and blasting forests into ash. Humanity fought back with everything it had. Railguns hidden beneath deserts fired into the heavens, missile silos opened in frozen tundras, and drone fleets swarmed into battle like angry hornets. The fighting stretched across the entire globe, every nation, every soldier, every civilian, standing as part of the war. Humanity had become one, united by fire, their survival instinct binding them tighter than ever before. Even as alien ships rained destruction, humans refused to kneel. In orbit, the fight was chaos. Alien cruisers clashed with swarms of human drones, their lasers carving the void, while decoys from Project Veil lured squadrons into ambushes. Human fighters, small and fragile compared to the alien giants, darted in and out of battle like daggers, striking and vanishing before enemy guns could catch them. Explosions lit the blackness, every spark a reminder that the war was far from decided. And then, in the midst of this chaos, something unexpected happened. An alien ship broke, formation, drifting damaged and alone. Human sensors detected strange signals coming from it, not weapons, not commands, but distress. Against the advice of many, a team of human fighters approached and boarded the wreck. What they found inside shook them to the core. The ship was filled not with soldiers, but with alien workers, low-ranking crew who were terrified and desperate. They spoke in broken fragments of human language, learned from intercepted transmissions, and their words carried a secret. Not all aliens wanted this war. Many had been forced, bound to serve under their masters, their fleets driven by fear rather than loyalty. Some even whispered that rebellions had already begun in faraway stars, sparks of resistance hidden from their rulers. The revelation spread quickly among human leaders, a dangerous truth that changed everything. The alien fleet was not united, and if humanity could exploit that fracture, the war could be turned. Back in the flagship, alien commanders raged when they discovered humans had boarded one of their vessels. They executed the crew who had spoken, declaring them traitors, and doubled their attacks in fury. But the damage was done. Humanity now had knowledge they were not meant to have, and knowledge was as deadly as any weapon. The bunker in Geneva erupted with new strategies, plans not only to fight the fleet, but to spread doubt among them, to turn their strength against itself. Messages were prepared, signals designed to reach the alien ships, whispers of rebellion carried through the void. If even a small part of the alien armada turned, humanity might gain the opening they needed. The battle raged on, day after day, and though the cost was high, humanity endured. Cities were burned, oceans boiled, and the earth itself bled. Yet, still the people fought. For every human that fell, 10 more rose, their spirit unbroken, their rage growing. In the skies, the lunar lance prepared for another strike, its energy building in silence, while Project Veil spun illusions that turned the battlefield into a nightmare for the enemy. The aliens had come expecting an easy conquest, but instead, they found themselves drowning in resistance, their ships breaking against a planet that refused to yield. For the first time, the possibility of defeat crept into their thoughts, and so the tide began to turn. Humanity, bloodied but unbroken, had proven they could not only survive, but fight back. The war was no longer a one-sided slaughter. It was a struggle between will and will, fire against fire, and Earth stood in the center of it all, a world that would not bow. The aliens had underestimated their prey, and now they faced an enemy that had no intention of dying quietly. The tide of battle shifted, and the galaxy itself trembled at the thought that maybe, just maybe, the humans could win. The galaxy had never seen an invasion like this. 10,000 warships descending upon a single world. Yet now more than half of those ships lay in ruins scattered across Earth's skies, and the once proud invaders began to feel the sting of fear. But instead of retreating, they turned desperate, willing to burn everything just to claim victory. Their commanders, furious at the humiliation, summoned the last reserve of their might, the flagship armada, a fleet of colossal warships so vast that each was the size of a city, and within those ships rested weapons capable of burning entire planets to ash. The order was simple: erase Earth completely, leave nothing alive, no cities, no seas, no forests, only dust floating in silence. When human intelligence caught whispers of this plan, fear gripped the leaders, for this was no longer about survival of people or armies, it was about survival of the planet itself. If the alien armada unleashed its full power, Earth would be gone forever. Yet even in this darkest hour, humanity refused to kneel. In underground bunkers, scientists and generals spoke in hurried voices, debating strategies, calculating risks, and searching for hope where little remained. The lunar lance was powerful, but it could only fire in cycles, and the enemy's flagship armada numbered hundreds of massive ships, each with shields stronger than anything faced before. Project Veil still confused the enemy, but illusions alone could not stop the rain of fire that was coming. Humanity needed something more, something beyond weapons, something that would strike not at the enemy's ships, but at their will to fight. That was when the prisoners' words returned, the whispers of rebellion within the alien fleet, the suggestion that not all aboard those ships wanted this war. If Earth could exploit that fracture, even the mightiest armada could be broken from within. And so a new plan was born, one more daring than any before. Instead of focusing only on firepower, humanity would use the power of communication. Through captured signals, engineers had pieced together fragments of the alien language, enough to broadcast messages that could be understood by the lower ranks of the fleet. Late into the night, a small group of linguists and AI systems worked, without rest, creating transmissions filled with defiance, filled with truth, reminding the alien workers that they were being used as tools, that Earth was not their enemy, that rebellion was possible. These messages were hidden within false signals, carried through the chaos of Project Veil, slipping quietly into the alien networks like shadows. And slowly, in the darkness of their warships, some of the aliens began to listen. The first signs came as hesitation. Certain ships failed to fire on target, certain squadrons moved slower than expected, and strange delays spread through the armada. At first, the commanders thought it was simply battle fatigue, but as more reports came in, whispers of disobedience began to spread. Some crews, though still bound by fear, began to question their orders. A few even sabotaged their own weapons, tiny acts of defiance hidden within the chaos. Humanity's plan had started to take root, but time was running out. The flagship armada had reached firing position, its colossal cannons beginning to charge, glowing with terrible energy. Humanity threw everything into the fight, drones swarming, railguns blazing, missiles streaking through the night sky. But the enemy pressed forward relentlessly. The heavens turned into fire as thousands of weapons roared, and Earth's defenders fell back again and again, refusing to surrender but unable to stop the storm. It was then that the third blast of the lunar lance finally unleashed, tearing across the sky like a blade of light, cutting through the shields of one massive flagship and splitting it in half. The explosion shook the entire battlefield, and, for a moment, hope returned, but the armada still advanced, and the lance needed hours to recharge once more. Humanity's fate hung by a thread. In the cities below, people watched in horror as the alien cannons glowed brighter, preparing to fire. The shot that could end the world. Children clutched their parents. Soldiers swore oaths through clenched teeth, and leaders prayed in silence. The order was given to prepare for evacuation into deep bunkers, but everyone knew that if the planet itself cracked, no bunker would save them. And then, in the very moment when despair seemed certain, something incredible happened. One of the massive alien ships suddenly turned its weapons, not toward Earth, but toward its own fleet. A blast of energy struck another alien cruiser, tearing it apart in flames. The battlefield froze in shock. The rebellion had begun. Human broadcasts had reached further than anyone dared to hope. Entire crews, long chained by fear, had chosen this moment to rise. More ships faltered, some refusing to fire, others breaking formation. Confusion spread through the alien armada, and their unity began to shatter. The commanders roared in fury, ordering executions, sending threats, but the cracks only widened. Humanity seized the moment, launching a coordinated strike that turned the confusion into chaos. Drones swarmed the weakest ships, railguns tore into their flanks, and nuclear warheads hidden for decades were unleashed with thunderous power. The sky erupted into a storm of fire as rebellion clashed with loyalty, and Earth struck with all its fury. Yet even as hope flared, danger still loomed. The Armada's core, the largest of the flagships, still held its weapons steady, its colossal cannon almost ready to fire. If that shot was unleashed, no rebellion, no weapon, no bunker could save Earth. The lunar lance was still charging, but it would not be ready in time. Humanity needed something faster, something desperate. And so a squadron of human pilots, already legends in their own right, volunteered for what was surely a one-way mission. They would take their fighters, load them with the last of Earth's nuclear warheads, and strike directly at the cannon before it could fire. The generals tried to stop them, but the pilots only smiled, saying that someone had to buy the planet, its future. With silent farewells, they launched into the black streaks of light cutting through the void as they charged into the teeth of the armada. Alien fire tore at them, ships exploded one by one, but the survivors pressed forward, weaving through destruction, screaming defiance with every breath. And then, with one final cry, they slammed into the cannon's mouth, their warheads igniting in a blinding explosion that shattered the weapon into fragments. The flagship reeled, its mighty cannon silenced forever, and a roar of triumph erupted across the earth. The rebellion spread faster now, alien crews emboldened by the sight of human sacrifice, and the fleet tore itself apart. Ships fought ships, commanders executed their own soldiers, and chaos ruled the skies. Humanity struck again and again, driving their enemies back, refusing to give them rest. The battle that was meant to erase Earth had instead turned into the moment that broke the armada. As the dust cleared, hundreds more alien ships lay in ruins, and the survivors scattered in confusion. The invincible force had been wounded beyond repair, their pride shattered, their unity gone. And though the war was not yet over, one truth had become clear to all. The tide of the galaxy was shifting, and Earth was no longer a victim, but a rising power that would not be broken. The rebellion inside the alien armada had torn cracks through the once unbreakable wall of power. Yet Earth's defenders knew the war was far from over. For though many alien crews had turned against their masters, thousands of hostile ships still remained, commanded by ruthless leaders who would rather die than surrender. And in the ashes of their pride, they prepared to unleash one final storm upon Earth. The sky above was littered with debris, burning wreckage falling like fire rain. But even amidst the chaos, the enemy regrouped, their commanders rallying the loyal fleets into one last formation, a spear aimed at the heart of the planet. Humanity, though battered and bloodied, did not retreat, for this was the moment everything would be decided, and there could be no second chance. Generals across the bunkers called their forces to arms. Pilots climbed into battered fighters held together by hope and tape. Drone swarms were reprogrammed for suicide missions, and every last missile was loaded for launch. Civilians, too, refused to cower. Engineers volunteered to guide defense turrets by hand, doctors turned soldiers, and even children carried messages and supplies through the underground tunnels. Earth itself had become a fortress, not of steel and walls, but of unbreakable will. The alien commanders, furious at rebellion within their own ranks, declared a purge, ordering all loyal ships to slaughter any vessel that dared disobey, and the void lit up with a civil war unlike anything seen before. Mutinous ships fired on their kin, loyalists struck back with merciless fury, and between them humanity hurled every weapon it had. The battlefield was no longer a war between two sides, but a storm of shifting alliances, chaos, and desperation. Yet in the heart of this madness, the largest of the enemy's flagships still stood, its hull glowing with energy shields that refused to break, its cannons raining destruction upon Earth's cities. That flagship carried the supreme commander of the invasion, a being who had sworn to reduce Earth to dust, even if every soldier under him perished. He had activated a weapon hidden deep within his ship, a device that did not fire beams or missiles, but threatened something far worse, a chain reaction that could ignite Earth's atmosphere, burning the skies themselves until nothing living remained. Humanity had never faced such terror, and when word reached the bunkers, silence fell like ice. But surrender was never spoken. Instead, the commanders gave a single order: stop that flagship at all costs. The lunar lance had begun its fourth charge, energy surging across the moon as the weapon prepared to fire, but its cycle was long, and the flagship would unleash its horror before the lance was ready. Earth's only hope lay in striking fast, in sending everything left against the monster that loomed above them. Squadrons of fighters rose once again, some piloted by veterans, others by young recruits who had barely learned to fly, but all carried the same determination: to give their lives if it meant saving their world. Drones, damaged and burning, were reprogrammed to hurl themselves like meteors into the flagship's shields. Railgun batteries fired until their barrels melted. Missiles streaked through the sky, and every eye watched the colossal ship as it began to glow brighter, preparing to unleash its doomsday weapon. Humanity's assault crashed against the flagship like waves against a cliff, sparks flying, shields shimmering. But still it held, refusing to fall. Pilots screamed in rage as their shots bounced harmlessly off its armor, and one by one their ships fell in burning trails. The alien commander laughed in triumph, declaring over open channels that Earth would burn and that resistance was meaningless. But then, through the chaos, a whisper came from the mutinous ships. They had heard the broadcast, they had seen the sacrifice of humans, and they too had decided that enough was enough. One by one, rebel alien ships turned their weapons toward the flagship, firing not at Earth but at their own master. The battlefield erupted anew as rebellion and humanity struck together, hammering the flagship from all sides. Explosions rocked its shields, chunks of armor tore away, and for the first time cracks appeared on its surface. The Supreme Commander roared in fury, ordering loyal ships to slaughter the rebels, but confusion spread too far and his grip began to slip. Humanity saw its chance and pushed harder, every fighter, every drone, every cannon focusing on the flagship like hunters striking at a wounded beast. The Supreme Commander, realizing his fleet was collapsing, poured all his energy into activating the Doomsday device, glowing brighter and brighter, threatening to end the world in one final blaze. Time was almost gone. The lunar lance was still minutes away from firing. Far too long. Humanity needed an answer now. It was then that a single human ship broke formation and dove straight toward the flagship. It was not a fighter, but a heavy transport, its frame old and slow, yet inside it carried something far more dangerous than weapons. It carried the stolen reactor core of a fallen alien dreadnought, a device unstable and volatile, powerful enough to destroy even the flagship, if detonated at close range. The pilot, an old commander long thought too injured to fight again, had volunteered for the mission, knowing it meant certain death. His voice echoed across the comms as he spoke, not with fear, but with calm resolve. He told humanity to hold. Strong, to remember that Earth was not just a planet, but a promise, and that promise would outlast even the darkest night. Then, with engines burning, he rammed the transport straight into the flagship's hull. For a single breath, silence held. Then the reactor core exploded with the fury of a dying star. The blast tore through the flagship, ripping its shields apart, shattering its armor, and consuming the Supreme Commander in a fireball that lit the heavens. The explosion shook the battlefield so violently that even distant ships staggered, and for the first time the invaders realized their leader was gone. The doomsday weapon, unfinished, collapsed with the ship, and the skies were spared. Humanity and rebels alike cheered, in defiance as the flagship's wreckage fell burning toward the ocean. With their commander dead and their fleet in chaos, the remaining loyalist ships broke, some fleeing, others surrendering, and only a handful continuing to fight. The lunar lance finally unleashed its fourth shot, sweeping across the heavens, and erasing the last formation of enemies in a blinding streak of light. The battle was over. Silence returned to the skies, broken only by the crackle of burning wreckage. Earth had stood against 10,000 ships, and though scarred and bloodied, it still lived. Survivors stumbled from bunkers, soldiers hugged each other in tears, and voices rose in triumph. Humanity had faced extinction and answered with unshakable will. The aliens who had once thought Earth an easy conquest had instead found themselves broken, defeated, and forever changed. The final stand had not only saved the planet, it had shaken the stars with a message that would never be forgotten. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak, and any who dared challenge them would pay the ultimate price. When the last echoes of battle faded and the skies cleared of fire, Earth stood scarred yet unbroken, and across the galaxy the news of what had happened spread faster than light itself, carried by fleeing ships, captured transmissions, and whispers. Among alien traders who had watched from the shadows, for the destruction of 10,000 warships was not something that could be hidden, not something that could be denied. And in that single moment, humanity had gone from an unknown backwater world to a legend that made even the oldest empires tremble. The survivors of Earth gathered in the ruins of their cities, soldiers and civilians alike standing together. And though they had lost much, they held their heads high, for they had not just defended their planet, they had rewritten their place in the universe. The Galactic Council, who had once mocked Earth as weak and demanded its surrender, now watched in silence, their halls filled with fear, because if a single planet with limited technology could destroy the greatest fleet ever assembled, then what would happen if humanity rose further? If humanity spread among the stars with the same will that had saved their home? Some alien leaders called for revenge, others for caution, and a few whispered that perhaps it was better to leave Earth, alone forever. But no one could ignore the truth anymore. Humanity had announced itself. The leaders of Earth, weary but unbroken, decided that silence was no longer enough. For if they did not speak, the galaxy would twist their story, so they gathered what little communication technology had survived. The war amplified it with help from the rebel alien crews who had joined them and prepared a broadcast that would reach every corner of the stars. In the command bunker beneath the ruined capital, cameras flickered to life, and a single human general stood before them, his uniform scorched, his face lined with exhaustion, yet his eyes shone with unyielding fire. His voice was steady as he spoke, carried not just in words but in conviction. He told the galaxy that humanity had not sought war, humanity had not asked for conquest. But when death came knocking on their skies, they answered not with fear, but with defiance. And though they were small, though they were new to the stars, they had proven that courage could shatter empires. He said that Earth was not to be enslaved, not to be conquered, but respected. And any who thought otherwise would face the same fate as the armada that now lay in ruins. His words were simple, his tone calm, but they carried like thunder through the void. Across distant worlds, alien citizens listened in silence, their hearts shaken, because never before had such words come from a people so young, and yet they carried the weight of truth. Some feared, some admired, and some felt hope, for if humanity could rise against impossible odds, then perhaps they too could stand against the tyrants who ruled them. The message became more than a declaration. It became a spark. Rebellions began to stir in the shadows, slaves whispered the name of Earth like a prayer, and even soldiers who once marched under cruel masters wondered if maybe the galaxy's balance of power was about to change forever. Meanwhile, on Earth itself, survivors rebuilt, their unity stronger than ever, for they now knew they were not alone, not weak, and not forgotten. They had allies among the stars, rebels who had fought by their side, and now together they forged a new bond, not of conquest, but of shared survival. But even as hope spread, danger lurked, for the Council and its strongest empires would never forget the humiliation Earth had given them. They would plot in silence, sharpen their blades, and wait for another chance. And humanity knew this. That was why the general ended his broadcast not with threats, but with a vow. He vowed that humanity would never again be caught unprepared, that they would learn, adapt, and grow, that every city rebuilt would rise stronger, every weapon forged sharper, every mind educated brighter, and that the next time the stars tested them, Earth would not only survive, but lead. The vow was not just for aliens to hear, it was for humanity itself, a promise to the children who had lost families, to the soldiers who had given their lives, to the world that had bled but endured. And as the message ended, silence fell once more across the galaxy, But it was not the silence of ignorance or arrogance anymore. It was the silence of respect, of fear, and of dawning realization. In the days that followed, fragments of alien. Fleets fled into deep space, hiding in shadows, fearful of pursuit, while rebel ships came openly to Earth, offering knowledge and alliances in exchange for sanctuary. Humanity welcomed them, cautious yet grateful, for they too had suffered under the same masters, and together they began to dream of something greater, a galaxy not ruled by terror, but by freedom. Scientists studied alien wreckage, engineers reverse-engineered weapons and ships, and slowly the once isolated species of Earth stepped into the wider stage of the cosmos, not as prey, but as equals, perhaps even as leaders. Songs were sung of the great battle, stories were told of the final stand, and the names of fallen heroes were carved into stone so that no one would forget how close the world had come to fire, and how it had risen from the ashes. Children played not with fear but with pride, pointing to the stars and saying that one day they would walk among them, not as victims, but as explorers. And somewhere, far beyond, in secret chambers of the council, old rulers debated in anger and fear. Some demanded the destruction of Earth. Others warned that such folly would only repeat their defeat, and a few whispered that perhaps humanity was the beginning of something unstoppable. They did not know the answer, and that uncertainty gnawed at them more than any weapon ever could. For the first time in countless ages, the rulers of the galaxy did not feel safe. For the first time, they feared the rise of a species they had once called weak, and for the first time, the stars themselves seemed brighter, as if waiting for what humanity would do next. Thus the war ended not with silence, not with surrender, but with a voice carried to every corner of the galaxy, a voice that said, humanity was here, humanity was strong, and humanity would endure. The message was simple, but it would echo through time, through empires, through hearts both human and alien. It was the message of survival, of defiance, of hope, and it was the message that would shake the stars for generations to come.